Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we are going to talk about an interesting concept in web designing, and that is nothing but a cookie. So cookies are nothing but it is actually a file which gets stored on your computer in form of a text file which contains users data, or what you could say, it contains your browsing data which can be used for a better user experience. So the best example of cookies is, let's say you're searching for some product. So let's say you're looking for buying a mobile phone on some e-commerce website. So what happens is that when you actually close that e-commerce website and when you go and visit some other website, so you will be constantly shown the same exact model of the phone which you were looking for to buy on the different site. So this is all possible due to using cookies. So what cookies does is that when you visit a particular website, the cookie is automatically created on your PC, and that cookie actually holds information about your browsing activities as well as some of your personal information. And the main reason for using cookies is to have a better user experience, so that the user has a better browsing experience. So that's the main purpose of using cookies. So in this lecture, we are exactly going to learn how we could use cookies in Flask. So what we are going to do in this tutorial is that we are going to create a cookie, and we are going to set the cookie to some value, and then we are going to basically read a cookie. So right now we have a bunch of things in the app.py. So what we are going to do is that we are going to almost delete everything, and we are going to write the code from scratch. So let me just go through this and delete each and everything. And let's define a function index, and let's associate that function with this URL right here. Now let's say this function actually returns us some HTML template, which is index.html. So I'm going to simply type in return render template, and we are going to pass in the template as index.html. Okay, so once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. Now we need to design the index.html template. So let me just save this code. Let me go back to the directory in templates. As you could see right now, we don't have any file named index. So you could also go ahead and delete these files because we don't need them, and name one of the files as index. So these files are actually from the previous lectures. So let's open up this file with Sublime Text. And here, let's actually go ahead and create a form which basically has two things. The first thing is that we are going to accept the user's name, and then we are going to have a submit button. And whenever the user enters his name and when he hits the submit button, what we want to do is that we want to redirect the user to a new page, which is nothing but the set cookie page. And let's assume that the set cookie page is actually going to set the cookie. So now let's go ahead and let's build this form. So I'm going to remove entire thing from here. So we are going to be left with the basic HTML template. And now let's start building a form. So this is going to be form. And the action is that we want to redirect user to a new page, which is nothing but set cookie. So I'm going to type in slash set cookie over here. And the method is going to be post. So we type method equals post. And inside this form, as usual, we have two attributes. First one is going to be to accept the text or the name. So we type input type equals text, not yext. This should be text. And the name is going to be equal to, let's say, nm for name. End the tag over here and make a similar such tag over here. That is going to be of the input type, and the type is going to be submit, as this is going to be a submit button. And instead of name, let's have a value over here. So let me just type in value equals submit. Make sure that you end the tag, and we are good to go. So right now the HTML form is ready, so we don't need to add anything else to this. Now let's move ahead and let's define something or some function for the set cookie URL. So as you could see, we have actually redirected user from this form to the set cookie URL when user hits the submit button. But we are yet to define what happens when the user visits this particular URL. So we are going to write the code for that in this app.py. So let's build a route for that too. So that is going to be app.route, and the route we are building is going to be for the set cookie. So slash set cookie, and the methods which we are going to use are going to be get and post. So let me just type methods equal post comma get. So this is what we usually do, and once these methods are there, now let's go ahead and define a function. So let's type in define set cookie, and to this we don't pass anything, and then what we do is that we check if the request method is equal to post, and if the request method is equal to post, then we actually extract the data which is entered in the form. So we type if request dot method, if this method is equal to post, that means we want to extract the data and store it into some variable. So let's store that thing into the user variable. So we type user equals request dot form, and we basically want the attribute which is named as nm, which is nothing but the name. So once we have this name, we could use the same name to basically set the cookie and to basically read the cookie. And now to basically set the cookie, we use a function which is called as make response function. So what we do here is that we build up a response. So we type resp equals, and the function which we use is going to be make response. So make underscore response is going to be the function, and to this function we pass in the template. So we type in render template, and the HTML template which we are going to pass into this is going to be read cookie. So we type read cookie.html, and finally to set this cookie we type resp dot set cookie, and this should be actually underscore, so set underscore cookie, and to this we pass in the user ID. So make sure that you pass in the user ID by typing user ID comma user. So that is going to actually set your cookie, and finally once everything is done, you need to return the response. So you type in return resp, and that's actually going to return the final response. So now this function is completely done, and now what we need to do is that we need to define this template, which is nothing but a read cookie. So what we want to do here in case of read cookie is that this read cookie.html file should contain a hyperlink to another view function which is called as get cookie, which is going to read the back and displays the cookie value in a browser. So what we essentially want to do is that whenever the user clicks on the hyperlink which is present in the read cookie.html, that should actually go ahead and read the cookie for us. So what we want to do is that we want the user to be redirected to a function which is going to read the cookie. So now let's go ahead and let's build the read cookie.html file. So let me just save the changes which I made here, and let me just return back to the directory structure, and in here we are going to make a new file which will be called as the read cookie.html. So what I'm going to do is that I'm simply going to copy this thing, paste it over here, and I'm going to name it as read cookie, and that is going to make a new file. Now let's go ahead and open this thing up in Sublime Text, and let's make some changes over here. So we don't need to work much with this file because we only need to add a hyperlink to it. So let's type ahref equals, and the address is going to be http://localhost:5000/get cookie. So now this thing is going to point to a new thing which is nothing but get cookie, and let's say this thing says something like let's say click here to read the cookie. Okay, so now once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. Now the only thing which we need to take care of is that what happens when the user clicks on this file. So as you could make out that whenever the user clicks on this file, he gets redirected to this new URL which is nothing but the get cookie. So now what we need to do is that we need to actually create, or we actually need to have a route and have a certain function to this URL right here. So again we need to switch back to app.py and make a new route for this get cookie thing right here. So I'm going to simply copy this thing, go back over here and build a new route. So I'm going to type in @app.route, and here I'm going to pass this thing as the URL, which is /getCookie. And to this we are going to make a new function which is also going to be called as getCookie. So we type getCookie over here, and to this what we want to do is that we basically want to make this function read the cookie. So what we do is that we type in name equals request dot cookies dot get. So this is the exact method which allows us to get the cookie, and to this get cookies method we actually need to pass in a parameter which is nothing but the user ID. So if you recall, user ID is this thing right here which we have set. So this similar user ID can be actually used to get the cookie information which we have. So right here let's type in the same thing, which is user ID, and that is actually going to return us the cookie associated with that particular user. And once we have the information, that is nothing but the name, we could actually display out this name as a result. So at the end you could type in return, and we actually want to return the name. So this is quite simple. You simply type in h1 tag, the opening tag, and the h1 closing tag, and in here you basically pass in something like hello, and the name is going to be plus name. So you simply type in plus and the name of a person over here. So that is actually going to display hello and the name which is actually stored in the cookie. So once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. So hopefully we shouldn't have any errors, but if we do have errors, then we will come back later and we will fix them. So let me just open up the browser and let me just type in the localhost address over here. So that is going to be localhost:5000. And yeah, even before that I need to start up the server. So let me open up the command prompt and let me just quickly start the server. So this is going to be cd desktop. So as you could see, the server is now going to get started, and yeah, it is started right now. So let me just refresh this page over here. Okay, so right now we have a form wherein you could enter the data. So let me just type in my name over here, and when I hit the submit button, we actually got an error. So let's find out the problem. So if you open up the terminal, as you could see, you will have these things here. So as you could see, it says that we have an error over here, and it says that make a response is not defined. So we actually need to import make response even before we use it. So let's do one thing. Let's go right here and import make response as well, and hopefully that should solve our issue. So let's run the server again, and let's see if this thing works this time. So let me just go back over here. Let me refresh this thing and let me hit submit. And as you could see, when we hit submit, it says that click here to read the cookie. So when I click this thing, as you could see, it says hello and my name. So what this thing basically did is that whenever we actually submitted this thing, the cookie was actually set and we were redirected to the set cookie page. Now in order to make us read that cookie, we provided a hyperlink over here. So whenever we click this, instead of using the set cookie, now we use get cookie and we get the details which were stored in the cookie itself. So now if you click this thing, as you could see, it actually read the cookie contents, and as name was actually stored in that cookie, we actually got our name back. So that is how cookies actually work in a website, and while we actually build websites in Flask. So this was a basic introductory lecture of how cookies work, and what you could do is that instead of just storing the name, you could also store other information about the user, like when the user actually logged in, at what time he logged in, and any other information related to the user. So this is how cookies can be used to store extremely useful information related to your website user, and hence they could be used in multiple applications. So that's it for this lecture, and I hope you guys were able to understand why cookies are used and how you could create your very own cookies. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.